Thank you. We're here today to remember the forgotten victims of anti-white racism. And I'm very pleased to be here as a member of the European Parliament, because my presence and your presence is helping to get this message, this fact, out to ordinary real people in Sweden. And it's very important, because we're here not just to remember Daniel, but many other victims of anti-white racism in Sweden. And this isn't just a Swedish problem. It's a problem in every single country in Western Europe where the liberal elite have created this problem of mass immigration and a multiracial, multicultural society. They call it a society. It's not a society. It's a nightmare for our people, and it's time to stop it. Just last week in London, a 19-year-old boy, Daniel O'Shea, became the latest victim of this when he was murdered by a gang of 30 blacks for the crime of being white. He joins a long list of victims in Great Britain: Chris Donald, Ross Parker, Gavin Hopley, Charlene Downs, tens and dozens and scores of victims murdered and forgotten just because of the colour of their skin. It's a shame, it's a disgrace. The first thing to do is to make people out there aware of it. That's the first step towards stopping it. And being here today, whether it's victims in England, victims in Germany, victims in France, or victims in Sweden, you have done your bit to stand up for those victims. Well done. But we must not forget that there are other forms of violence than stabbings and beatings and murder that affects our people because of the multicultural society. There's also the sexual violence directed against thousands of young girls by predators from the Muslim communities up and down the length of Europe. It's not politically correct to say it, but this is not a racial problem, it's not a cultural problem, it's a religious problem, because that's what Islam is about. It's about taking other people's women and taking other people's countries. There is an element within Islam which is peaceful, which is decent, which is a good way to run those countries. But there's a strong part of Islam which is violent, which is aggressive, which is predatory, and is about taking other people's countries, including yours, Sweden, and they will take it. And the criminals in that building will give your Sweden to the Muslims unless you stop them. And then even broader than that, there's the mental violence, the psychic violence directed against every single Swede, every single English person, every single Dutch person, every single person in our Western Europe who sees their countries becoming a foreign place, who walk through streets they no longer recognise, who can't hear their own language, who view their own children growing up as a minority in their own land in the years to come. That's a form of violence against our people. It's mental violence, especially against old people and especially against the young people who look around and think, my God, what sort of country are my children going to grow up in? They'll grow up in a good country, they'll grow up in a decent country if we have our way. And all these different forms of violence against our people quite rightly make us all angry. It's one reason we're here, because we're angry against the injustice, against the violence and the fact that all too often the media and the political elite won't even talk about it. They brush it under the carpet. So we're angry about these things. We're entitled to be angry. But it's essential we are angry at the right people. And it is not right to be angry against the immigrants, because not all immigrants are racist murderers. Not all immigrants are sexual predators. Not all immigrants are criminals. Many of them are decent people who've come to the Western Europe to get a better life for their own families, and we can't blame them for that. They are not the people to blame. We must blame the people who brought them here, the people who've done everything they can to repress our people's complaints, our people's concerns, to silence people who said, we don't think this is a good idea. Those are the people to blame. The people who brought the immigrants here, and the people who then turn a blind eye when some of them commit criminal acts, including murder against our people. We must blame not the immigrants, blame the liberal elite in that place. They're the ones to blame. The liberal elite who forget or ignore the lessons of history. The liberal elite who forget or ignore the lessons of biology. The liberal elite who can afford to send their children to very expensive schools, who can live in their own very expensive houses, away from the trouble that mass immigration brings ordinary communities, working class communities, the people on the front line. So blame the liberal elite, blame the fools over there, not the immigrants themselves. Blame the capitalists, blame the big bosses, blame the people who want mass immigration, because mass immigration means cheap labour, because cheap labour means bigger profits for them. Blame them. Blame capitalism, don't blame the immigrants. Blame the Marxists, the people who so hate Western society, who so hate Christianity, who so hate the old traditions of our people, who so hate all the nations of Europe, including Sweden, that they'd subject the people of Sweden to the most appalling problems created by mass immigration, because they want to get rid of the people of Sweden, just as they want to destroy Western culture, Western civilization and Western identity. So blame the Marxists. You can blame their little baby boot boys over there. And they're not boot boys, are they? If it wasn't so cold, they'd all be wearing sandals. You're dealing with upper class, silly little kids who haven't the faintest idea of what it's like in real life for real people in places like Stockholm, in the poor parts of Stockholm, in the poor parts of London, in the poor parts of Berlin, in the poor parts of Oslo. They haven't got the faintest idea because they've never done a day's work in their life, and nor their parents. And you can blame the Zionist elite, the people with so much power in the mass media throughout Western Europe and in the United States and in Hollywood, where so much of this mental poison comes from in the first place. Blame those people, not for standing up for their own people, not for insisting that their people have the right to their identity, because they do have their right, but for denying us that same right, and for condemning us as extremists and racists and wicked people for wanting and demanding for our people the same that they demand for theirs. The right to a homeland where our views, our identity and our culture and our civilization is not only preeminent but is going to survive for all time. All peoples are entitled to that, including the Swedes, including the British, including the French, including the Russians, including all the peoples of Europe. We're entitled to our place under the sun as well. So blame those people, and I think you do. But more than that, resolve today, here and now, to do more to oppose those people, because they are very powerful, and they are getting their way, little by little, street by street, house by house, town by town. We are losing our places. We're losing our Sweden, our Europe. We've got to stop them. And you can't stop them by drinking a few beers. You can't stop them by reading a couple of papers. You have to stop them by real contact with real people, talking to ordinary real people in language that they understand. If we don't do it, nobody else will. The time is coming when we can win, because those same liberal fools who foisted this disgusting multiracial nightmare on Sweden have also forced on all of Europe, on the whole world, a banking system which is fundamentally corrupt and is failing, an economic system which is collapsing. The time is coming when all the uncertainties which made it possible for them to leave ordinary Swedes sat happy in front of a television thinking it's not my problem, that's all ending. They've so destroyed the world's economy that there's hard times coming. And the good thing about that is in hard times people have to start to think for themselves. They have to stand up for themselves and for their families and for their communities and their nations, because if they don't, nobody else will. And those are the time which we must prepare for. So, redouble your efforts to tell people about what's going on, to build whatever organisation you're in, to build it to do good things. And if your brother here in this demonstration is in another organisation, well, respect what he does in that organisation and get on with your own organisation, because we're all pointing in the same direction, which is to free our people from the nightmare of multiculturalism, the nightmare of liberal capitalist rule, and to preserve our people from the horrors that those lunatics over there would impose on them if ever they got the chance. And resolve most of all, when you think of young Daniel, when you think of all the other victims of this racist plague of which our people suffer, when you think of them, resolve to work night and day through your life to bring justice to those people, to bring justice also for the attackers, to bring them to justice, because now so often they escape it, to bring the apologists, the defenders in places like that, the people who impose this nightmare, to bring them to justice. And resolve most of all that the attackers, the people who excuse them, the people who make it possible, the people who condemn us for standing up to our people, that they will one day have no place in Sweden, no place in Europe, no place in our lives, because Sweden and Europe and our lives will be filled with justice and decency and hope for our children in our lands, in our future. Thank you.